Welcome. Welcome to another excellent opportunity for training. We are thrilled to be here. I'm Jay Bassell, the marketing guy at Equipment Zone, and thrilled that so many of you have chosen to spend part of your day with us live. This will be a recorded session, so you will be able to see it again on our YouTube channel soon. So I am surrounded by greatness with Roy Huseman and Terry Combs. Without those
How you
two,
doing?
it would not be much of a webinar. I can trust me on that. So Terry is one of our lead sales and training reps here at Equipment Zone. Terry's a seasoned veteran, and Terry, you know when I say that I mean seasoned, as in flavorful, not
Not done this for 40 plus years. Is that what you're saying?
No. I wasn't going to say that, but you did. But you did. And Roy Huseman, also one of our lead technicians, also in that savory category of seasoned veteran. Roy, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're both here. I'm thrilled because, as I said, it wouldn't be much fun without you. So I'm going to make sure that I've got my notes in front of me so that we can stay on track and have a.
All right. Well, hey, Jay, before we go further, if you'll indulge me for 20 or 30 seconds, I just wanted to share with our listeners and the folks listening to us through the archive that all this is fairly new technology. DTG has been around for about 20 years. DTG with white ink about 17 or 18 years. DTF, most of us had never heard of it 2 years ago. All new stuff. So, service and support are, after your sale, before the sale as well, to get all the proper information, but after, crucial to making a purchase like this. And, many of our listeners already have equipment. They're here to get tips and tricks, but we have a lot of new folks as well. So I just wanted to say, things like proper installation support, maintenance training, all these things are critical to get off on the right foot. We hear people say, well, I bought a machine in China. Yes, you can do that. You can go to China and find a machine, but the help you need may be a little bit difficult to get based on the language barrier and the time barrier. So, a lot of those machines, when we hear, hey, I bought a machine in China, there's a reason they're calling to tell us that, because they've shoved it to the back of the shop. They threw a tarp over it. And can you help me with a new machine? So you're also going to need supplies. You're occasionally going to need some parts, any type of equipment you buy. And so Equipment offers support on both coasts. Epson backs us up on all of our DTG and sublimation, the other type printers. We stock all the supplies. We stock all the parts for the DTF printers. And as a reminder, Equipment Zone support is always free for as long as you own your equipment. So just wanted to, say a couple of words about, there's more than just buying your equipment. So
100% agree. Couldn't have said it better for sure, Terry. Thank you. And I love what you said about it's new. This is a new and emerging technology, especially on the DTF side. It's new to us. Yes, we have an EasyJet Pro 24-inch. It's a well-built machine. We're still learning. Sure. New developments, new issues, new training opportunities. So we hope that you can afford some patience with us also as we're on this journey with you. But we're with you. We're not gonna leave you alone. We're not gonna leave you on the side of the road saying good luck. Hope the next guy will pick you up. So we're thrilled to be doing these as a series, and thanks again to the tech department, because they've helped not just with Roy, but Roy's the face today. But we do have a robust tech support team, and they have contributed, and we're grateful for them. Like I said, it wouldn't be much of a DTG and DTF tech talk without the tech department. That goes without saying, but I've said it 3 times already, Terry. So, that's just from the heart. It's from the heart. But let's jump in. Let's jump right in. We have Roy. I've got some slides I want to share. Roy, if you could, but while I get ready, maybe you could tell us about the importance, really, especially with both printers, I guess, but we're talking mostly about the Epson F2100 right now, the DTG side first, and then the DTF capabilities second. But Roy, what's the typical, startup? Is a nozzle check the place for us to start every morning, or what are you recommending?
Well, typically, what I would say is you want to start with looking at your production day. So just like if I was going to take a long trip in a car, I'm going to check my oil, my tires, radiator, and things of that nature. It's very important that you check everything between your pre-treatment machine or whatever pre-treat you're using. Make sure your heat press is turned on, heated up, ready to go. And the printer, you're going to shake your white ink, throw them in there, let the printer go through its startup procedure, and then do your nozzle check. A lot of people don't do nozzle checks every day. It's very important you do, because it's going to save you time and possibly money, because you could have some waste. If you end up starting your day, and especially if you have other employees running the equipment, before you know it, you could have 10 or 15 ruined shirts that you've got to throw in the trash because someone didn't pay attention and it wasn't printing properly. So quality is definitely something that is an issue. So in order to make sure that you get the best output possible, I follow the progress of my first shirt through the whole process. Even though I don't normally put a pause, I'll put a pause and check my white coming off the printer, even after I've done nozzle checks and checked everything, just to make sure still everything's running good. And then I'm ready to go with my production day.
Let me pause you right there, Roy. Brilliant insight. I hope I want to repeat this so everybody can catch it. On the first shirt of the day, Roy follows the process through the entire way. Like you're checking everything, kind of that first t-shirt or hoodie or whatever we're printing. That's
making sure the pre-treat spray is correct and nice box, no voids or blotches, stripes or anything. Heat press is curing properly, temperature stable. We take for granted our equipment is robust and built well, but you never know. I mean, the heating element can be on the fritz or not maintaining the right temperature, and then realize, hey, even though I'm running my normal cure time, I'm not curing. What's going on? And then you can follow up with checking your equipment out. And same with the printer. You want to make sure everything's working properly before you start running a bunch of shirts through. And again, especially if you have a high production environment and you got other employees involved, you definitely want to make sure that someone in that area is going through and checking out everything before you start throwing a bunch of shirts through the process.
I love that. I love what you said there. Thank you, Roy. Now, last time we talked about this will probably come up a few more times. So unless our viewers who were paying attention to the last DTF Tech Talk, we definitely did talk about nozzle checks and the breaking in lines. This is a different scenario. This is a different situation. This came through on our Facebook group, and I invite you all to join if you're an owner or an operator here in the US. We appreciate that, the majority of the group are not our customers, but we still have a fantastic group. This was something that someone shared, and they were like concerned because if you look at the yellow and if you look at where the white starts to touch with the magenta and even the cyan into the magenta, it almost like starts to bleed. It almost starts to like I don't know, it's like something's going on, and they were concerned about it. So I thought I would bring this to you, and then you could tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, a couple things on that. It could be very high humidity. Could be the fact that I just wiped my plexiglass prior to doing the nozzle check and having some excess moisture on the surface of the glass, which causes the ink to run into each other. Keeping in mind, it is a water-based ink to some extent. So definitely something that could happen. Worst case scenario, it could be a situation where my printer is starting to have issues with maybe something within the head, either the dampers or some nozzle issues as far as the flow of ink. So that's not as likely if it's something that I could turn around and start printing on a shirt and not have any issues. Or a good check on that is looking into my capping station here, So when you get your cleaning set, it comes with the wiper box, comes with a capping station, comes with a pad here, a spit pad. Now the capping station has the 5 white oval rubber caps. So if you look at those and inspect those and you find residual ink going inside of them, like a little puddle or something, then that would be indicating that there's a possible mechanical issue that needs to be addressed. So if you're under warranty, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call Epson, but you could always field the calls through us first, just to double check, run a couple things. Again, you could turn around and run a nozzle check on paper to just look at the cyan, magenta, black, and yellow scenarios. Obviously, white's hard to see, but the other colors you'll be able to see if you're continuing to see a bleeding between the colors. If not, then most likely it's just a moisture issue on the glass that could cause that, okay?
So what you're saying, you're saying don't panic, but be aware of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay,
Do
no,
a
that's
couple
good. That's good.
little tests here and there and check it out. And if everything looks good and you're printing fine, there's no ink dropping anywhere inside the capping stations, then I would just go ahead and proceed. And you could always run another nozzle check and make sure that that plexiglass is very dry when you do it. Check your humidity. That's something we were talking about earlier, me and Jay, is what's too high of a humidity? Obviously, if you get upwards of 70% or higher, you could have issues with the actual droplets coming down to the fabric, or when you do a nozzle check, the actual nozzles will look a little wiggly. In fact, now that I look closer on the white, it looks like some of the stair steps are kind of broken and moved out of position. So that would lead me to believe that it's probably an excessive humid environment there. And typically when I'm looking at the nozzle check, it's a stair step coming down in steps. So if I see one of the stairs moved and at an angle, that doesn't look right either. And that's usually contributed to too much humidity.
Awesome. Okay, well, listen, that was perfect. So I'm going to emphasize it again, every day, nozzle check, right? It's one of the many steps in kind of booting up your system and getting ready for the day. As you start to venture into production, there will be other things to check, but this is a critical step, because then you have the confidence of moving through the rest of your production, ready to go without worry. So I'm going to turn this next question over to my co-pilot here, Terry. And Terry, this is the I want you to closely look at the printer for just a second and tell me what you see on the printer specifically.
Is it the fact that it's an F2000?
Yes, my friend, that is correct.
Well, if someone's still running an F2000, and I think they've crossed many hurdles already. That printer has been out of production for 6 years, something like that. So,
if they're still running, I mean, that's actually a pretty positive sign, right? And we have a lot of customers that.
We have lots of customers who still run their F2000s. I'm not sliding it at all. It's just at this point an older machine, but Roy, this question also, I think it encompasses a lot of people asking this question. So part one is, how can my white ink be more bright and more vibrant generically? And then we can talk specifically about this print.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on the 2000 versus the 2100, the white is handled differently as far as the 2100 giving you an highlight white capability. Okay.
Right.
That's the big difference between the two machines. So if I were looking at the 2000, I only have 2 print settings. I have a 1 and a 2. Okay. So 1's going to put 1 layer of white down. 2's going to put 2 layers of white down, and then the color. So ultimately with the 2100, I have the ability to put one layer of white down, and when I put my color pass, I can hit that other white area again with a mist of white, which to me is a better route in going to 2 passes of white. And the reason is because it's not as much white. And when I put my first white down, that white is starting to set up. And when it does, the second pass with the color and that misting of white allows for just enough white to give me what I need to kind of cover that surface and give me the vibrancy without putting too thick of a layer down, okay? Because sometimes if you put 2 layers of white down, you might be susceptible to premature cracking within the wash cycle. So, you know, after about 35 washes, starting to get up there in washes, believe it or not, I have shirts that are well over 75, 80 washes right now that I'm still wearing every week. Going back to the tech support thing is, even though we were seasoned, that Jay mentioned early on, we still test everything. And what we tell customers is based on not only knowledge, but results of our testing and working with different products, just to make sure with what we tell our customers in a production environment, and when you start selling to your customers, whether it be a wholesale, retail, or a job shop, you're going to have consistent results, and you're not going to have phone calls with irate customers saying, hey, this didn't work. I just washed this shirt and the image washed out. So obviously following our procedures are based on experience as well as continual testing as we move forward, because the environment's changing. But not to get sidetracked from the white, again, I would rather speed up my production with 1 white pass than have to go through with 2. So if we look at a 2000 versus a 2100, and you know, I'm not trying to be negative towards electronics or the capabilities of the machine, but there is 6 settings on the 2100, and personally, I only focus on 3 of the 6, 3, 5, and 6 itself. Okay, level 4, it doesn't have the highlight capability. Okay, level 4 is actually the same as level 1 on the 2000. Level 6 is the same as level 2 on the 2000. So we actually have a 3 and a 5, which have the highlight whites. The only difference between the 2 is the color that I put on top of them. The white base is the same between 3 and 5. My white is either a 720 by 724 passes, which is not available on the 2000. So the 2000 is already printing at a higher level as far as quality goes than the 2100 capability. So when I'm printing on shirts that are more coarse fabric-wise, they may require some more whiting, okay? So that's something to look at. So the other thing is going back to some of our videos, if we have the right amount of pre-treat on the shirt, then we may not need as much white ink. So, and again, the curing is critical too. This is the thing that I think a lot of people don't focus on or pay much attention to, is the fact that curing the pre-treat is critical and having a dry shirt is critical. And that dry shirt isn't going to stay dry for long. The higher the humidity in your environment, the quicker that shirt is going to stabilize, meaning it's going to wick moisture back into the fabric, compromising my pre-treat and allowing for some of the ink to follow the water into the fabric. And that goes with under curing shirts really as well. And I always hear comments when I train or even from other vendors out there is our competitors tell customers don't use the grip pad, okay? Oh, you don't need to put that on there. I can load more shirts per hour using the grip pad. That's part of the reason why Epson introduced it. And if Epson came out with it, Why are people not taking advantage of that? I think the biggest issue is they're having issues because they don't understand this process. And the biggest thing I hear is, well, I got ink that's on my grip pad, so I don't want to put it there. It's easier to let it go on my plexiglass because I can wipe it off with water once a day or once every other day or so. It's like, to me, it's like, well, there's a problem there, okay? I've never had any ink saturate from my top layer of fabric through the surface into the underneath of that layer, or all the way through to the back of the shirt.
Wait, that's a problem? That's an issue?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Terry, I
that's
saw
it.
Terry chuckle when you said that, so I was just gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
always,
basically,
I was just going
Go
to say there are a lot of Band-Aids out there, but Band-Aids don't fix the root problem. You have to go find out what the root problem is, and rather than take the internet advice and put a Band-Aid on it. But sorry to interrupt you there, Roy.
no, you're good. Yeah, it's good to have the back and forth. But anyway, getting back to the white and what have you, that's some of the issues. So looking at this image that was displayed on the screen, if I have pre-treat, even though it might be the right amount, if the shirt is not 100% dry, the white ink will follow the water into the fabric layer, allowing some of the fabric to show through. So that's one of the things that I would be looking at here. Is that shirt dry? Did I pre-treat it correctly? Did it get cured correctly? Because I should have white on the surface of my fabric that looks like I took a paintbrush and painted white paint on it. Okay, if it looks anything other than that, then I have an issue. This is one shirt that I do show customers when I train. Okay. Number one is the correct amount of pre-treat and incorrect amount. So you can see the ink just saturates into the fabric, okay? The other thing is, if I have a good white base that looks like I painted it on, I got good vibrant color, okay? So they both go hand in hand. At the end of the day, it's more critical to focus on the pre-treating and curing before you get to the printer, and then focus on the white base when you're at the printer, because some fabrics are going to require more white ink. The more coarse the fabric surface is, the more white ink is going to be required, because in essence, I'm creating a canvas to paint on, and my color is my painting, okay? So just want to make sure that we kind of go through those steps there. And then I don't have to focus on as much color. I do see a lot of times where people say, oh, we'll just add 10% more color to get more vibrancy. Well, I think it all relates to the white ink and the pre-treatment at the beginning before I even get to that color point, because I don't see any reason why we need to go more than the 1440 by 728 passes on color if we have the right white base down. So I always focus on the white first. I don't mess with color density on dark garments. It's strictly white. If I have to go to 2 passes of white, then I will do that. So with the 2100, we have 3 white capabilities, okay? Or it's actually 4, okay? So we have level 1, which is more of a flood of white ink, okay? Not a grayscale white, but it's a 4-pass only. So to me, I always tell people, if you got a grunge image or distressed, you want to go ahead and use less white, you could do that. But the way the white gets laid down is not something I would use personally. And the amount of color going down on top, there's only 2 passes of color. It's a low resolution as well. It's basically there for some quick and dirty, fast printing, okay? It's not going to be your practical settings, and that's why when you open Garment Creator, your default is level 3. Obviously, if these are things that are exciting you, you could always pay for training if you didn't get trained from us, and again, revert back to calling tech support if you have more questions. So I don't want to get too deep in that. But then when you get levels 2, 3, 4, and 5, the 4 doesn't have the highlight white, 2 and 3 and 5 do, but 2 doesn't put enough color ink on top. It's the same as level 1, so I don't use that. I discount level 2 and just basically use 3 and 5 because they both have those highlights. The other thing is when I'm in those ranges, 2 to 5, when I put more white down, and this is the biggest thing that I see out there, even in our Facebook group, and we don't want to bash anybody or say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, but if you do a test, you can see all these things visually, okay? When I go from 0 white ink density, adding more ink on my white side, okay, nothing happens until I achieve at least a 40% ink density, okay? The first thing that occurs is if I have more white here and a little less white here, because it's more of a grayscale, giving you the ability to output photographic quality prints on shirts if you have high quality shirts, which your more coarse fabrics can't handle that white. It has to be more of an even, consistent white, getting back to the graininess of the fabric or the depth of the weave. So if I go from 0 to 10%, and this is what I say, I'll just throw 10% more white on there. I see that even in our Facebook group, or 15. That possibly puts less white down. The reason is because the first thing the software does is even the white out. It takes some white from here and moves it over to here where there's less white to get more of an even lay down. And then once that occurs, it goes ahead and starts adding and compiling white until it floods the area where the image is going to be. So if I put 100%, then I'm going to have 100% white underneath every drop of color that goes down on that shirt. If it's at 40%, like I said, typically that's your breaking point. So I would rather run a level 5, which is going to be the same color as level 6, with 40% more white than run level 6 with 2 passes of white and 1 color. 2 reasons. My production is going to be sped up. When I put 2 passes of white with level 6, there's going to be areas of oversaturation which require a drying time or pause of 30 to 60 seconds. So ultimately, I could take a print time of 2 minutes and make it 5 minutes just by going from 5 to 6. Now, if I do 40% more white base on level 5 versus level 6 just straight with a 30 or 60 second pause, those 2 images are going to look pretty close, okay? Now, some shirts are going to still require going that extra mile to level 6. If it's a cheaper garment with less quality control, where there's more issues when it comes to the reaction with chemicals and dyes that are residual in the fabric through the pre-treating process and everything. So again, sometimes you're just forced to have to throw a lot of ink at a product. But again, as a good business owner, to me, I would say, you know what? That's the last time we're going to use that product. We're going to try to find a product that we can run through in a quicker production environment so I can get more work out and make more money and keep my costs down to my customers. So anyway, I know I went off on that a little bit.
Those were good tangents, Roy. We were listening. We were hanging on every word. And I was texting Tara. I was like, this is really good stuff. I don't want to cut him off.
We could certainly spend an entire webinar talking about white ink. So
absolutely. It comes up every time.
Definitely.
I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk about it. I do want to ask a quick question because you brought it up, just to clarify on that piece. It sounds like you are conclusively saying that the substrate is a critical component to the final output. And so that the higher grade t-shirt, the finer the weave, the tighter the comb, the tighter the spin, the higher the quality of the t-shirt, the better the print. Is that relationship still true, Roy?
Yeah, I would say that's part of it. The next part of it is the manufacturing of it. I think some of the cheaper products out there are going to have less quality control, more contaminants in the dye and chemicals that color the fabric, and the fact that some of the cheaper products don't have post washes and things like that to remove some of that stuff, you know. And it
Gotcha.
kind of ties in with other videos we have in reference to pretreatment, is repelling the water, which is in the pretreat and ink, giving me a less quality of a print just because of the garment that I'm printing on.
Right,
That's
right.
one of the things I do mention with customers is I have 3 points of failure before I even leave this machine. One, assuming I can print on a shirt just because it says 100% cotton and it's just not going to work. Two is not having the right amount of pre-treat. And third, and most common mistake, is going to be under curing the shirt and not keeping it 100% dry. And keeping in mind that my pre-treatment has a time factor between the time that I took it off the heat press and the time that I put it on the printer. The higher the humidity in my environment, the lower that time factor is. So ultimately, I need to make sure that that shirt doesn't wick moisture back into it, soften up, because when it softens up, then the water will pull the ink down into the surface of the fabric with it, rather than the ink staying on the surface and the water getting sucked up into the fabric to dissipate and allow the ink to set up.
Okay. Hey, Roy, I'm gonna nudge you a little bit. I love these answers.
Yeah.
They're a little long and they're a little deep. We've got more questions, so I want to make sure. Plus, we've got people that are chiming in on the chat. So don't be upset with me. I'm just kind of gently nudging you. You're gifted in what you do and you go deep, and I love it. But I just want to kind of summarize them quickly. I also want to make sure that everybody that's tuned in, that's listening, that doesn't know this, in the chat with regarding to this concept, this was a 100% cotton high quality shirt. So that's what was confusing to the operator, was they were not seeing the consistent bright whites that they had seen before. And it was something that ended up being an issue with pre-treatment. So just to kind of give you guys a conclusion of all of what Roy said, at the end of the day, this was more about the pre-treatment than it was the actual white ink on this particular issue. Hope that makes sense. So I wanted to go forward one more slide, Roy, because one of the things that we get asked a lot about is banding. This is also a DTG print. It is on an F2100 using 100% cotton shirt. And you can clearly see in the cyan what almost looks like texture. The white is pretty bright. Don't be fooled by the photo. It looks really white in the lower left-hand corner and it starts to yellow. And that's really more about the angle of the shot than it was the printing. But you can see in the whatever they want to call that little crest, not the screaming mouth, but it almost reminds me of the fire police crest. Right. But that blue, that cyan, what's going on with that?
I think because it says fire on there.
That's a clue. That was a clue for me.
That's a clue. District fire.
That's a subliminal.
But anyway, yeah, two things could cause something like this. Number one, we talked about following the first shirt through the process, making sure I do a nozzle check. So if I'm missing a couple cyan nozzles, usually 2 to 3 of them, I'm going to get banding. Okay, and that would be a result of that right there, is I'm missing my nozzles for my cyan. Secondly, if I run a nozzle check and I still have that problem, typically when you have screens and you have large solid area, which is what that was, because you have blocks of color, no screening, you can also end up with a lower resolution for the actual block of color, which if I run in my standard default level 3, because I'm running at the 720 by 720 DPI, then I can end up getting banding there. Is it as common? No. I think the most common is going to be missing a couple nozzles. And even with tech support, we do get a lot of calls sometimes. And it's like, oh, God, I got this crappy print. And it's like, did you run a nozzle check? No, I didn't. When was the last time you did that? Well, it's been probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's like, well, a lot can happen in 3 or 4 weeks to your head. And sometimes that 3 or 4 weeks could turn into a situation where I have to purchase a new head, which is actually sad if you're out of warranty. So definitely when you're turning on your printer, nozzle check is the most important thing to do. But again, not to go off on that. So first, nozzle check. Second is increasing my resolution on my color to the 720 by 1440, which would be jumping from 3 to 5. Or 3 to 4, which to me, I don't use 4 because there's no highlight white, and 4 and 5 are the same except for that part of it. And that's why I bought the 2100, you know, to get that highlight white feature.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that was a great answer. Thank you for being a little shorter on that one. It was an easier question too, to be honest. We've had a few questions that pop up in the chat. I'm going to use a little bit of time right now if we can. One of them was interesting to me. And for those of you who are chatting, thank you for sharing those. We may not get to all of them, but I'll try to get to a few of them when we can. And if we have some time at the end, I'll scroll back. The question is, can you put too much pre-treatment down from your machine onto a shirt? Will that be an issue?
Well, yes, you can. Okay, so a couple things that can happen with too much pre-treat. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a really bad effect. So if I create too much of a pre-treat layer, then part of that could break down through wash cycles and subsequently give me less wash. The washability is going to decrease with a overly pre-treated shirt. That's probably the biggest negative, okay? But is that really a problem at the end of the day? I think most important, especially if I'm manually pre-treating or I'm using a Wagner or something like that. When I have a machine that's consistent, and I think the biggest thing that I hear out there with issues with DTG processes, the pre-treat, it's such a mystery, and my machine never works. It's like, well, you got to take care of it. And really, the amount of maintenance on this machine is literally less than 2 minutes a day, okay, to keep the machine performing and spraying properly. If I have a nice, even square of pre-treat, then I'm going to pretty much get a good print. If I'm using a Wagner, don't get too close. Be further away, especially with the newer styles. They vary now. Some of them are continuous air. Some of them are pull the trigger a little bit and the air comes on and it jerks your arm, and then you pull it the rest of the way. You want to either do whichever is more comfortable with you, a straight blade down, and then move over and go down again on the second side with a slight overlap, okay? You want to be able to cover the entire shirt, so you got to keep the gun far enough away to get a blade about that wide, okay? And second, you could go and turn your blade the other way if you want to go from left to right and back again. So you want to be able to do a pre-treat in 2 passes. Get used to the speed that you're moving your arm. Make sure that the shirt is saturating. What I tell people is if you looks like you spilt milk on the shirt, you put too much pre-treat. If you pick the shirt up and it's dripping off, obviously too much pre-treat.
Yeah.
But you want to have a nice saturated moist area. And if you're on a black shirt, it's easy to see. I always tell people, imagine it started raining, the black top is now saturated with water right before it starts to flood and roll off into the gutter. That's what you want your shirt to look like, okay? And that way you have a good saturation of pre-treat. And again, you want to make sure you're curing correctly. I don't like to see, and this is just me nitpicking, 30 seconds and 10-second intervals till the shirt's dry. That's not going to be consistent. If you got employees, they're going to be like, oh, well, this one's good. That's good enough. That's good enough, because they're rushing along. Just set a timer and go with it, okay? Make sure that shirt is dry. I use 90 seconds. When we do shows, we do not touch the heat press. Everyone that comes in contact with the heat press, with a garment, it's all at the same time, same temperature. We do pressure of 2, 90 seconds at 330 degrees, okay? That will cure anything. It'll cure a shirt correctly with ink, which is our goal. It'll cure any amount of pre-treat on any shirt that I put, even a Gildan that requires more with the soft styles and all that stuff, the thicker garments. It's kind of like a towel, a thin towel versus a thick one. that thick towel is going to hold more water. Again, more pre-treat the thicker shirts. So again, I hope I covered that.
Yeah, no, good answer. I'm gonna fast to the next slide. Terry, thank you for answering some of the questions in the chat. We're trying to do 3 things at once, which for Terry and I is, well, for Terry, it's easier. For me, it's not easy. So
No.
I'll point the finger back at this guy. But it's Terry's turn to ask the question. So I want to make sure that we advance the slide here so we can see that, and then I'll give it up to Terry.
And yeah, Roy, so Jay's going to bring up a DTF transfer. And, speaking of banding, this example looks more like it's even been scraped across or something. What's your thought on the cause of this look of this garment?
Well, looking at it, it looks like it's appearing in the black, okay? And I don't really see it in some of the other colors. So it could be something going on within the printer as far as maybe a nozzle or something. And, again, it doesn't refer to a banding issue per se. It could be that I'm not maintaining my printer properly, okay, and having something building up on my head itself. There is the maintenance of what they call cleaning around the head. A lot of people may not do that. Watch the video. You can scan the QR code here on the printer to get to that video. But what happens is ink gets on the head. It picks up lint and particles that are blowing around and gets it saturated, and the head grows a beard, literally, okay? If you watch that video on cleaning, it will drag across your media as it's printing.
That's what it looks
that
like.
That beard will hang down far enough to do that, okay? So if maybe that's what that could be. That would be the first thing I look at is the head itself, moving it to the center, looking inside there with a flashlight or my phone, taking a picture of the head, and looking at it on my phone. So that would be number one. Number two, what I would do is isolate my colors. I do a solid box of white, yellow, magenta, and black in a small line, and then I can print that on a piece of film and see how that comes out. If I see something going on in a specific color, then I can address that with that color. Could be, again, something going on with the nozzles, where, the other thing that I wouldn't completely rule out either is that it could be the film, that it got some scratches in the emulsion. That could cause something like that because you have no emulsion there to hold the ink. It's going to pull it off into, various other areas as it's being laid down, leaving a void. Okay, so that would be the other thing to look at on that.
Great answers. Yeah, this is interesting. One of the things that was asked earlier, and that's why I was waiting to ask it now because we're on DTF as a topic, if you went through the process correctly and everything looked good and you think you've completed the process and you've heat applied that, but within one wash, it's wrinkling off, it's peeling off, what would your instincts tell you? What did we maybe miss? Did we miss a step, or did we miss a temperature, or did we miss something in the curing process? Why would, after one wash, a DTF be peeling off? What's your gut say, Roy?
Well, my gut would say on that would be that it wasn't cured correctly.
So temperature or time or pressure?
I would say time and temperature and pressure, they all contribute to the curing process. So depending on the product, the most important thing to consider is what's actually happening. We have our ink, we have the white, we have our powder, and the white and the powder are bonding and holding everything together, okay, as far as the color and the ink. So if I take that and put it on a substrate, I got to heat it enough to melt my my adhesion powder after it's been cured, and it's got that rubbery texture to it, almost like a silicone surface. But again, I have to heat up the fibers underneath to get that bond with it, okay? So if I'm transferring to a sweatshirt, it's going to require a longer dwell time to create that bond, because that temperature of the fabric's got to heat up to adhere that glue to it. I do see that a lot with sweatshirts. Is, you know, they're trying to do a 15-second time, and it's a super thick sweatshirt, and they start to go peel, and it's already peeling up. Okay, so if I do that and it takes me 30 seconds or 35 seconds to get that adhesion to where I can do a good peel, then next would be my secondary cure. If I don't follow up with that secondary cure with the same time, then I'm not going to get a good washability at the end of the day.
You mean that second press?
Sure.
You do two presses. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I got to do two presses. The secondary presses is important as the first one. The first one, you're just transferring. The second one, you're embedding that into the fabric, and pressure is needed definitely for that. You want to make sure that the adhesion is going deeper into the fibers on that second press. The first time, you definitely wanted to get it to stick. The second time is more critical to washability. And some people, to be honest, I think are neglecting that second press entirely because it's time consuming to do a second press. Some people will just go with the first and say, oh, that's good enough. And then these other things start to occur. Mm-hmm. Or go with a much shorter time on that second press of 7 seconds or 6 seconds or 5 seconds, thinking that that's going to be good enough, not realizing that whatever my first press was required to make it happen, the second press should be the same amount. Now, overpressing too, I've gone to as far as our material, our ink, or in the F2100 ink, going up to 60 seconds on a secondary press and seeing if something happened, whether it started to melt the ink or distort the image or things of that nature, kind of like a melting type of scenario, and nothing occurred. So haven't had any issues. And getting back to Terry's mention early on that we've been at this for about 2 years now. So I have shirts that I did December of 2020, although the DTF is a little thicker because we've refined how our white and our powder goes down, and it feels a lot better and has a softer hand now. But those shirts I'm still wearing, as I mentioned early in the video, right. Upwards of 80 washes or so. So I got about 18 months. Every week I take them home. I don't turn them inside and out when I throw them in the hamper.
What?
We wash them, and I have a handful of shirts that I wear every week just to see how they're going to perform. Some of them have DTS on the front and a DTG on the back. So anyway.
No, that's a great answer.
That
I appreciate
answers that question.
It does, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna turn it over to Terry here in a second. He's got an idea that we're gonna maybe have a lightning round. We are at about 48 minutes after the hour. We've got about 10 minutes, and we're gonna wrap this up. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to the entire tech team, not just Roy, but there are others, and we appreciate all of them. And we were lucky enough to have somebody who purchased an F2100 from us, who had it had arrived, they had it all set up, and they were so excited that they started to print with it and practice with it before they got Roy's training. And in this case, it was Roy. I know that because she reached out and gave you a huge shout out. But I want to share this now so that people can see, because we see these all the time. We often don't share them, but I'm going to share one today so that folks can kind of get a better perspective of what we mean when you receive proper training. So what you're looking at on the screen here is the before and after. The image below was the same graphics, same settings, same printer, same heat times, dwell times, press times, etc. The only difference was the training that she received from Roy. So it's a little bit of a, yes, I'm giving Roy a little X. His head's going to start to, inflate just a little bit as he's walking around the rest of the day. But it isn't just Roy. I mean, it's Sophia, it's Miguel, it's Joey, it's even some of the staff like Terry, who are so well versed in all of this, can be kind of frontline troubleshooting, although that's not his role. But I mean, if you happen to ask Terry, he oftentimes knows a lot of the answers. But I just wanted to give you another shout out to everybody in our tech team. we know we're not perfect, and we're doing everything we can to answer all these calls and get back to people in a timely fashion, and doing the best we can with what we've got. But this just visually showed me what a night and day difference. The visibility, the clarity, the colors are popping. Now, one thing I do want to ask you before we go to the lightning round with Terry, white shirts, Roy, white shirts. We get off on this topic all the time. Do I have to pre-treat my white shirts, or should I pre-treat my white shirts? What do you say to those two questions? Do I have to, or should
I? No, you don't have to.
Okay.
And the training that I do, in most cases, people don't get light color pre-treat right out of the gate because they don't plan on printing a lot of light colored shirts. But when they do, they won't have the pre-treat available. So they got to be able to navigate through that process of, how do I print on a shirt that's pre-treated versus not? And that's what I cover in training, is the ability to understand what happens when the ink goes down on the fabric. We talked about pre-treating and the ink sitting on the surface. And with non-pre-treating, I have my ink hitting the fabric, and it's going to follow the water into the fabric layer, period. There's no stopping it. Okay, so with that, I have to know in my mind, I got to add more ink in order to counteract that. So when I go wash the shirt, it's going to maintain the vibrancy. We do have 3 garment creator videos on YouTube. If you look up our YouTube station and just type in the search bar for our videos only, garment creator, you'll see garment creator light colored shirts. I go through the whole process of why it's important to pre-treat in certain circumstances, which to me, if it's a photograph, something high quality, I need a lot of detail, or I have colors that are prone to bleeding together, or what we call ink blotting, okay? So if I have issues like that, then I'm gonna have to be forced to pre-treat, but those are few and far between. The biggest thing is, I would just go straight to a level 2 and a double strike with a 30-second pause, allowing that first pass of ink to dry, creating a quasi pre-treat layer of ink instead of just pre-treat. And then the second pass of ink rests on top of those droplets, okay, giving me a shirt when I go to wash it is going to look just as vibrant as it was before I actually printed it. I mean, washed it, I should say.
Awesome. There you go, Terry.
Now, there was something that popped up on the screen I do want to address real quick. And it's the way the chat was worded. And I'm not trying to point that out or anything, but how do I establish the exact color match on DTF on the printer? Okay. The one thing to keep in mind,
Terry, this is part of the lightning round. You just didn't know it. So here we go.
If I print on this printer via DTF or DTG, period. Okay, DTG, I'm using different substrate colors, different shirt colors, what have you. Those hues are going to have an effect on my output of color. Okay, period. When I go to DTF, I have a control of maximum -50 on my white, period. Okay. And that is the capabilities of using this printer for doing DTF. We do have a calibration tool, or I should say an IC2 profile that we implement that gives you a pretty close match. Okay, so definitely want you to know that. And if I use that profile, one of these is DTG and one of them's DTF. Okay, they look pretty close in color. The biggest variation, if you look down here at this flower, okay, right there, that flower, and this one is a little bit more orange.
The other corner, there you go.
Sorry about that. Yep, I'm in reverse here. So, sorry, mirror image. So you can see this one's a little bit darker orange, but all the rest of the colors are pretty good. There's a lot of colors here, but again, am I going to match everything in the rainbow? Never going to happen, okay? If you want to do that type of color, you're looking for a lot more expensive processes involved here, which is creating your own profiles, understanding how to do that, and being able to buy the software and hardware to do it. So, and that would go with any type of end result you're going to do with the substrate. So if I'm going on a white shirt versus a black shirt versus a brown shirt versus a blue shirt, each one of those DTFs are going to have a slightly different hue, and the color is going to change slightly. So again, it's going to be a nightmare. What you want to do is try to say, this is as close as I'm going to get to where I want to be. So again, I do tell people, which when it comes to outputting, to output color charts. Okay, so I have.
And I can testify while Roy's looking for that. This is something that Roy does all the time. I'll walk in and there'll be 4 or 5 new color charts that he's been testing, sitting on top of the printer, sitting on a shirt. It's a constant for us. We're in pursuit of the perfect color, and I don't know that we're ever going to get there, but we're always in pursuit of that. There's home up some now.
So here we go. This is a DTG. Okay. The biggest thing is I'm not looking at the color as much as I'm looking at my grayscale, which is across my bottom here. Okay. All right. So you see that grayscale across the bottom. So without the calibration set that we give when we do your updates, this is my grayscale. You see the bottom? Okay.
Yep.
That's taking a lot out of my color opportunities there, because I have no grayscale behind my color. A lot of the colors look washed out. Okay. With our calibration set, you can see I have a much better grayscale.
Yeah, you can definitely see the difference in those grays.
Yeah, there's all the way from white to black, and I have all the grays in between. It's hard to see on the camera, but even the one right next to the white here is still gray. This one, I'm solid white, 3.5 squares in. Okay, so it's all flat.
Which one is that you're holding up, Roy? I forgot. Which one is all flat?
This is without the calibration,
okay.
Just using standard settings within Garment Creator to do my DTF, which is the same settings that creates this on a DTG. So definitely want to keep that in mind, is that you must implement the profile. Here's another example. Colors that people try to achieve is gold and silver on a shirt, or even doing what we call neon colors. Again, there's no neon ink on the printer, so you can't really print neon, but we can get close when it comes to certain colors. Here's an example of that. Okay, a neon pink and yellow.
Well, Terry, we're kind of rounding third, sliding into home here just about. Were there any other questions that you felt like we should address before we say farewell?
I think, well, Roy, do you want to give a couple of 5 to 10 second answers?
Sure.
Okay. Let me go back to the beginning here. When you say porous shirts that might require more white ink, are you referring to heavier or lighter shirts?
I'm referring to weave only. Okay.
Right.
So basically, what I tell people: go get a magnifying glass. Look at that shirt surface. If it looks flat like paper, you're going to spend less money on the process, less pre-treat needed, less ink needed. Okay, getting a better quality shirt if it's a higher quality shirt. If I look at the shirt with a magnifying glass and it looks like the surface of the moon, well, I got to fill all that space in. I always tell people, if I have a waffle, I got to fill that in. Imagine if I took a knife with butter and just spread it across and made it flat, then poured my syrup on top. Well, it's not going to take that much to do the job. That butter is my pre-treat and white ink. Okay, once I achieve that, because if I don't get my white flat across the surface, guess what I see? I see the weave through my print, and it affects the quality of the look. Okay, if I have my white thick enough on the fabric layer to cover all that, then I now have a flat canvas to put my color on, and I'm not going to see that weave, okay? Because that's the biggest thing as far as bringing the quality down, is how coarse that weave is and having something super coarse. So it could be a good avenue to go DTF on something like that, especially if it's a high poly content product, like a 60-40, 60 poly, 40 cotton, or anything all the way up to 100% poly.
Very good. We are at on the top of the hour, Jay. Are we proceeding or?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. I want to share a couple of screens here. A lot of times folks don't know how to get in touch with us. First way to get in touch with us, if you need technical support help, a lot of times they'll reach out to the Facebook group, and that's fine too, but that's kind of group think, and we're monitoring that, but we're not necessarily there to correct everybody. So from time to time, there still could be some incorrect answers, and I really don't like using this word, but misinformation. So the truth is, if you're looking for help, true tech support, it's open to anybody. I mean, give us a call first. Check it out. We might know how to help you. Even if you didn't buy your printer from us, we understand. That tech support is a ticket-based system. You go online and you fill out a ticket, and then they're answered in first come, first served basis. So in the order in which they're received is how we reach back out. Sometimes it's via email, sometimes we reach out with a phone call, depending on what the answer is or how involved it may be. So visit us at equipmentzone.com/tech support. You can see it up there on the navigation bar. There's a tech support dropdown. Fill out your form there. So that's open Monday through Friday, by the way. And then you had already referenced this, so thank you, Roy, but we do have wonderful deep dive videos on Garment Creator, on DTF, direct-to-film transfers, on DTG, on color theory. One of my favorite series was the where we break down each of the, it's like an index. We created the DTG printing index, and you go through each step from substrate to pre-treatment to curing to printing and the environment. And every one of them was more than an hour and well worth the watch. We did a lot of time on this. We put a lot of energy into those. I strongly recommend, if you're new, that you check out that series of the DTG printing index. And all of them, there's more than 125 videos up there. Rarely are they pure sales videos. Most of the time, like 98% of the time, even in those videos, there's something to be gained by watching them. So I strongly recommend that you go to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe, by the way. It's one way you can thank us for doing these webinars, is to subscribe. That way you just get a notification every time we do a new one, because we will record this and post it up there. So that's really the last thing. And Terry, why don't you take us home with how people can get in touch with us?
Absolutely. You can certainly find us at equipmentzone.com. You can call 800-408-0040 and ask for any of us. If you'd like to reach out to me, it's Terry at equipmentzone.com, or our other sales rep there in New Jersey, Amy.K at equipmentzone.com, and happy to answer any questions you folks might have.
And thanks, Roy. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your deep answers. We know sometimes it's hard to hold you to just a 5-second answer, but it's one of the things that we love about you, is your willingness to kind of give us the context as well. So like a true teacher would. So thanks to everybody who tuned in today. We're going to continue marching through on this series. As was noted in the chat, we'll probably have a more DTF specific version of this. But what we're also doing is just kind of taking some of the top most frequently asked questions that we get, and then we kind of bring them back to you. So at least once a month for the rest of the year, we hope to be able to fulfill this series. And just want to tip my cap to both Terry and Roy and everybody back in New Jersey, all of our tech support helpers. We appreciate them as well. So take care, be safe. Until the next webinar, we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye. Take care.